A big thank you to this week's video sponsor, Adobe Stock. More on that later.
Morning all, and welcome back to Wales and to what I think is probably the best blue hour I've seen all year so far. Some lovely floaty clouds above Snowdon, there's not a breath of wind, and so there's a lovely reflection as well. It's all very nice. There are millions of insects around this morning, so I'm getting eaten alive, but apart from that, it's going quite well. Oh, and also my hatred of tripods has come back to bite me this morning because I didn't bring two tripods, which I often need if I'm shooting photos when it's dark, because well, I need one for taking photos and one for keeping you on. Sadly, I haven't got that, so you're sort of resting on my rucksack at the moment. So if the image isn't completely level, yeah, I apologise. Right, it's getting brighter by the minute, so I've switched to handheld. I can get a shot, the same sort of shot that I've been shooting so far, now at about a quarter of a second. So ISO 500, f8 to f10, about a quarter of a second I'm looking at. So I feel fairly confident I can start shooting handheld now. Question is, are these clouds going to catch? I'm feeling semi-confident, I think. Come on. Yeah, while we wait to see if that sky's going to catch fire, becoming less confident by the minute, I thought I'd talk a little bit about something that some of you have noticed recently, quite eagle-eyedly, I'd say, which is that I've not been using a lens hood all that much. And previously, I've used a lens hood religiously, mostly for protective reasons. So typically, if your camera's going to slam down into a rock, if you drop it or something, the best thing to protect your front element, I think, is a lens hood. And yeah, that's primarily why I've used them. However, since moving back to Wales, I've sort of remembered how windy it is here most of the time. Not this morning, there's a 0 mile/an-hour wind here this morning, but most of the time it can be quite windy, and therefore when you're trying to take photos handheld, as I often am, it can just act like a bit of a parachute, particularly on long lenses where you have long lens hoods. They do kind of catch the wind and make your lens unstable. So I think that it's better here or in any other windy place often to not use a lens hood. Also, actually, I've become much less averse to flares recently, lens flares, which is one of the major reasons you'd use one of these. I think there's been a really big push recently towards imperfect photography, which I'm a massive fan of because it adds some realism back to photos. A lot of the time, when you see literally a perfect photo, it can just look, yeah, unrealistic, I think. So to have things like lens flares, imperfections in photos, I'm all for, personally. And yeah, it's another reason not to use one of these. But I am obviously a lot more scared about falling over now than I used to be when I used lens hoods. That's one thing I do need to be aware of more. I just try and use lens caps more when I'm not shooting, as annoying as that can be. Right, I am on a mission to explore a little bit further down the lake, which I've never done before, madly. I don't really know why, but I'm hoping to maybe find some opportunities for photos around here that I can utilise on other mornings, maybe in winter when it's really, really crisp. For some reason I fancy coming in winter, don't know why. Also, it's amazing how much less I'm being attacked by midges now that I've taken the world's most luminous hoodie off. Who'd have thought it? Won't have that problem in winter either. Well, funnily enough, this is exactly the sort of place I think I'd be more than capable of smashing the front element of a lens, particularly without a lens hood on. So I'll put the camera away for a minute, which I think is best. Not such a big issue with a GoPro, because you can just replace the little plastic bit at the front. Yes. This is a nice spot. F9, 40th of a second, ISO 125, 35mm. What a lovely scene. Right, I'm just flicking through this morning's photos, and I think I've found a pretty good example of a photo that's better for not being perfect, and it's this one. So you see the ripples in the water there. I think a lot of people would have thrown out this image on the basis that it's not as perfect as some of the others, when it comes to the reflection. The thing is, if you have a perfect reflection, often it can just look like it's been done in Photoshop because it's so perfect. Whereas this one just looks a lot more real. And I mean, you could do this in Photoshop, obviously, but you never would. Why would you make an imperfect reflection in Photoshop? Anyway, I think it's much the same thing with things like lens flares. It can make an image feel a bit more real and normal than just something that's absolutely perfect. Which actually, to be completely honest, is at odds with things that I've said before about long exposures, for example. So I've talked about one of the reasons I don't like long exposures, which is that I think as soon as you see a long exposure, you know that it's a photo. Which sounds an odd thing to say, but often when I look at images, I'm completely drawn into the scene and I kind of forget a lot of the time that it's an image that I'm looking at. But when I see a long exposure, it might be a waterfall, the sea, some moving clouds, whatever it is, immediately I know that that's a photo because I can never see that in real life. And yeah, you could say exactly the same thing about lens flares. But because lens flares are often avoided, I think it's a little bit different. And the imperfection there is much like the ripples in this photo, in that it does add an element of realism. I don't know really if I'm making much sense, but hopefully if you've followed this channel for a while, you'll understand my way of thinking. Odd as it may be. Here's a pretty good example of a perfect reflection. Tell me that that doesn't look photoshopped. That's ridiculous. Isn't it mad how tiny Snowdon looks there? It's the mountain on the left. It takes hours to walk up that. Cracking camping spot. I'm gonna have to check myself for ticks after this, walking through these ferns. Ooh. That is a super nice little tree. Look at that. That'll be incorporated into a photo. Have a go. Trying to get that and a reflection though might be tricky without a drone. It does really get messy with that reflection in the background though. And the only way to shoot this tree is, as I say, a drone. I don't know, 20 feet up. I would try it, but I used literally all of my drone battery before, and I only brought one, sadly. f5.6, 200th of a second, ISO 100, about 45 mil. Lovely stuff. I'm just going to sit here for a bit, I think. Probably not until winter, but until it gets too hot today. Nice place to be. Good news! I've found my other drone battery. Didn't think I brought it, but turns out I'm cleverer than I anticipated. Slash, I forgot I left it in my bag. Anyway, here is the sort of composition I was talking about. One where the tree is not interfering with the reflection of the mountains. And I think that works pretty well for a still. I mean, I love a play around, but you can sort of see the premise. Oh, not that way. Something like that. Yeah. Let's see what that looks like.
I really wish I'd done a 10 photos from video from there this morning. I didn't really realise that it was a good opportunity to do so until I got back to my car and I was driving off. And I didn't have 10 photos then, so it wasn't a 10 photos from. Thing is though, I do think it'd been a decent location for it, and I've noticed that when I do a 10 photos from video, I take a load more photos at the place that I'm at than I otherwise would if I wasn't doing that as a challenge, and that's the sort of place that suits it perfectly. Never mind, I'll do it next time. Anyway, a big thank you for watching, and a big thank you to this week's video sponsor, Adobe Stock. So, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Adobe Stock basically gives you the chance to earn some money from your own photos and your own videos in your own time. And you can literally earn money with Adobe Stock as you're sleeping. So in short, basically, it's where all the world's most creative people go to seek inspiration, to show off their own work, and to potentially license their own work to millions of buyers. You can upload content whenever you want, and uploading is simple. You can even do it through Adobe Lightroom. Just this little button here, you just drag and drop your images into there. So just like I did a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to upload some of today's photos to Adobe Stock, and I'm going to title them. I'm going to give them 15 to 20 tags to make sure that buyers have the best chance possible of finding those images. And as I say, it's a really simple process, particularly with images like this where I don't have recognizable faces, there are no modern buildings, and I've not included any logos, because that means I don't need any releases. And then once you've added some information to help people find your work, Adobe's moderation team will take a look at those images, and they'll make sure that they're in focus, that they're exposed correctly, that there's not too much noise. And from there, you'll have the chance to start earning money from your own work. And so if you've got hard drives sat at home with images of your previous holidays, or maybe just stuff that you've taken in your back garden, and you think they might be of interest to other people, then let Adobe Stock help you earn some money from them. So you can click the link in my description to get started, and a big thank you to Adobe Stock for their support of this channel. It's much appreciated. As is you watching this video, that's very much appreciated too. And I'll see you next week when, well, if all goes to plan, we still won't have a baby. Still a couple of weeks to the due date, so fingers crossed he doesn't turn up early, because I am not ready.